For 4 seasons, from 2017 all the way to 2022, pretty much everyone on Netflix was completely hooked on this dark, thrilling, and, let's be honest, often terrifying story about a family's deep dive into the criminal underworld. The show, of course, was Ozark, and man, it didn't just get popular, it became one of the streaming giant's most acclaimed crime dramas, period. And when I say acclaimed, I'm not kidding. This wasn't just some show people binged over a weekend. No, this was a critical powerhouse. We're talking an incredible 45 Emmy nominations, and it took home 4 of those wins. That's how you cement your place in television history. So at its core, the show has this terrifyingly simple idea, right? It asks, what happens when a totally normal, kind of mild-mannered financial advisor from the Chicago suburbs gets in way over his head with the Mexican drug cartel? Well, he's forced to just pack up his entire family, move to the Missouri Ozarks, and he has one mission: launder $500 million, or else. All right, so how did this show become such a phenomenon? Here's the plan. First, we'll look at that high-stakes premise and the world the Byrdes get thrown into. Then we'll dive into the big themes of corruption and survival. After that, we'll break down how they built all that suspense, tackle the tough moral questions the show asks, and finally, we'll talk about Ozark's lasting legacy. So where does it all begin? Well, everything in Ozark just ignites from this one single catastrophic moment. Marty Byrde's business partner gets caught skimming money from the cartel. And in this desperate last-ditch effort to save his own skin, Marty pitches this wild idea: the Ozarks, an untapped paradise for money laundering. And that right there, that's the conflict that fuels the entire series. We get to watch Marty Byrde, a guy who lives in the world of numbers and spreadsheets, get forced to become a master of, well, coercion and crime. And he does it all, supposedly, to save his family. You see, this isn't a transformation that comes from ambition. It's born out of pure, desperate survival. But here's the thing. The Byrdes don't just land in some empty, quiet wilderness. Oh no. They basically stumble right into this really complex and dangerous ecosystem of local crime families, sneaky political operators, and federal agents. And every single one of them has their own ruthless agenda. Okay, so at the center of it all, you've got Marty. He's the pragmatic brain of the operation. And then there's Wendy, who just evolves into this absolutely ruthless political force. But their story is completely tied up with these other amazing characters, like the fiercely intelligent and tragically flawed Ruth Langmore, the terrifyingly unpredictable Darlene Snell, and of course, the calculating cartel boss himself, Omar Navarro. This table, honestly, it just perfectly captures the show's core tension. It's this constant, nerve-shredding performance of being a normal family. I mean, one minute they're at a school fundraiser, and the next, they're in the middle of a negotiation with a cartel leader, or literally hiding a body. This insane duality is the tightrope they have to walk every single day. But look, Ozark is so much more than just a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's this really deep, unsettling exploration of some of the darkest corners of what it means to be human. We're talking corruption, that primal instinct for survival, and what happens to the idea of family when it gets twisted. And this is so important. We are not watching heroes here. Marty and Wendy are classic anti-heroes. They do some absolutely monstrous things, but, and here's the scary part, they do them for reasons that can feel disturbingly relatable. And that forces us, the viewers, into this really uncomfortable moral gray area. It makes you ask yourself, wait, am I rooting for criminals right now? And why? You know, you hear the comparison to Breaking Bad all the time, and honestly, it's for a really good reason. Both shows are absolute masterclasses in tearing a character down to their core. They both explore that same terrifying question. Just how far will a seemingly ordinary person go, and how many moral lines will they cross when they think their family's survival is at stake? So, what was the secret sauce? What made Ozark one of the most binge-worthy shows out there? Well, the answer is really in its perfectly engineered story, and it's just meticulous attention to detail. It's basically a masterclass in how to build and sustain suspense. The writers on this show absolutely perfected this relentless cycle of tension. Just when you think the Byrdes have finally found a moment to breathe, a new threat pops up. Maybe it's an FBI agent, or a rival cartel, or a betrayal from someone they thought they could trust. So they scramble, they innovate, and they barely survive. And they get this fragile piece that lasts just long enough for you to catch your breath, and then bam, the next crisis hits. It's this inescapable loop that makes it almost physically impossible to stop watching. And the show's craftsmanship is just incredible, right down to the little details. I mean, check this out. Even the opening credits are part of the story. The storytelling is so deliberate that in every single episode, the 4 symbols inside the O on the title card actually foreshadow key events. It turns the title sequence itself into a little game of suspense. How cool is that? Okay, but beyond all the suspense and the thrill of it, Ozark's real power is in the questions that it leaves just rattling around in your head long after the episode is over. It really holds a mirror up to our own ideas about what's right and what's wrong. And this is probably the biggest question the show asks. Is survival the ultimate morality? I mean, the Byrdes justify every single lie, every crime, every body as a necessary evil to keep their family safe. The show just relentlessly asks us over and over, is there a point where the cost of surviving just becomes way too high? And maybe one of the most heartbreaking parts of the whole series is the impact this has on their kids, Charlotte and Jonah. They aren't just watching from the sidelines. They become participants, victims, and eventually they're products of this criminal world. It really forces you to think about that generational trauma, that cycle of corruption that they've now inherited. The show paints this really bleak picture of the world, right? From the cartel violence all the way up to political bribery and corporate greed, Ozark suggests that crime and capitalism are uncomfortably intertwined. It makes you wonder if that line we think exists between the legitimate world of business and politics and the criminal underworld is dangerously, maybe even illusorily, thin. So when all the dust settled and that final season came to an end, what did Ozark leave behind? Why are we still going to be talking about this show for years to come? Well, for starters, it's one of those rare shows that didn't just stay good, it actually got better as it went on. I mean, just look at the numbers. Its critical reception peaked with a near-perfect 98% on Rotten Tomatoes for Season 3. That just shows you how the drama kept escalating and how confident the storytelling became. And of course, you absolutely cannot talk about Ozark without mentioning the powerhouse performances that really anchored the whole thing. You had Jason Bateman's perfectly controlled panic as Marty, which made all his criminal math feel disturbingly rational. Then you have Laura Linney's terrifying transformation into this ruthless political operator, which just shows you the seduction of power. And then there's Julia Garner as Ruth Langmore, the show's tragic heart, the breakout star who won a staggering 3 Emmys for that one role. Just incredible. Ultimately, I think Ozark's legacy is how brilliantly it blended all these different things together. Yeah, it was a nail-biting thriller, for sure. But it was also this really profound psychological drama about a marriage, about a family, and about the corrosive nature of the American dream when it's pushed to its absolute darkest limit. The series ends with this shocking, final act of violence that pretty much solidifies the Byrde family's survival. But it leaves us with one really haunting question. They survived. They won the game they were forced to play. But after all the destruction they caused and all the pieces of their own souls they lost along the way, you have to ask yourself, what was the actual prize?